Let's begin by cultivating our motivation. Get a sense for a moment of the happiness we feel when we can open our hearts to others, and when we have a strong sense of ethical conduct in our own mind. This ethical conduct, the essence is abandoning actions which harm others, and that opens the door to cultivating attitudes and actions that are of benefit to self and others. And remember for a moment how happy we feel when that kind of attitude or motivation is in our mind, when it's coming genuinely and sincerely from our heart. And then let's make a determination to increase that attitude, that motivation, and to make our lives really meaningful by practicing the path to enlightenment and becoming fully enlightened Buddhas, so that we can lead others out of their confusion and despair that is found within cyclic existence. And so imagine the happiness that you can feel when you really have the capability of being of great benefit to others and leading them out of samsara. So before we actually get into the teaching today, I just wanted to share part of my day with people, because I did something I've never done before, which is I spoke at the Rotary Club in Seattle to Spokane. Sorry, forgot where I was. The Rotary Club in Spokane. There were about 140 people there. And they had asked me to speak about the Eightfold Noble Path and relate it to the Rotarian's four-way test, which is when you do something to see, is it the truth? Is it fair to everybody concerned? Does it promote goodwill and friendship? And is it beneficial for everybody concerned? Okay, and so I spoke about the Noble Eightfold Path and related it to their four-way test. And it was remarkable, I had, because these were just kind of, regular people in the business and professional world, and they all just were rapt, listening, and at the end they stood up and gave a standing ovation, which had nothing to do with me, but it was about the power of hearing about the importance of kindness and benevolence and ethical conduct, and it's like they were so hungry for this, yeah, and that really made an impression on me, that these people who are what society knows as successful are so thirsty and hungry for talk about good values and good principles and living your life from the heart with kindness. It really made a strong impression on me. So I just wanted to share that with people, because you never know who is going to be interested in the Dharma, do you? You never know. And sometimes we think, oh, such and such relative will be interested. They have no interest. Then you think somebody else won't be interested. They're interested. You know? We really don't know how and when we can be of benefit. So, yeah, I found it very touching. Were you as touched as I was? Yeah? And one man even came up to me afterwards, because I had mentioned, you know, maybe someday all of us together could bring His Holiness to Spokane. And one man came up afterwards, and he was like, you know, he couldn't speak. He was on the verge of weeping, because he just said, I want to help if you do that, you know? And he was just so touched by that thought. So I just found that very beautiful, how people could open their hearts to, you know, and I was saying that what I'm talking about isn't special to Buddhism, it's the essence of all the world's religions. So, anyway, we'll get back to mind training like rays of the sun. By the way, the Rotary Club was the one who offered the Abbey, who gave us a grant for $1,808 to buy the DVD player that duplicates the DVDs and the labels that are forming the series of 10 DVDs on this text, so that we can send this out to the inmates across the U.S. So it was from their kindness and generosity that we were able to do this service project. So of course I thanked them for it and made a few comments about how I think the prison system could be improved while I was there. Okay, let's go back to our text here. So we've been talking about the point 4, which is called elucidating a lifetime's practice, and the line in the 7-point thought transformation is blend the practice of one life with the 5 forces. So we've been talking about the 5 forces. Okay, so there was motivation, yeah, and then white seed, or maybe virtuous seed is better, destruction, prayers of aspiration, and then familiarization or acquaintance. And so last time we talked about motivation, we talked about the virtuous seed, you know, our motivation in the morning, the virtuous seed to, you know, purify and accumulate positive potential, okay, and to study the thought training teachings. And then the third one, destruction, which is to destroy the self-grasping ignorance and the self-centered thought. And then now is the fourth one, which is prayers of aspiration. Okay? So here we're talking about how to do these 5 within one life, you know, while we're alive. Yeah, and then later we'll do it, how to practice them when we're dying. Okay, so our book says about the power of aspiration. We should make great prayers and aspirations that by the force of mundane and transcendental merit in general, and especially our own merit created by body, speech, and mind throughout the 3 times, all sentient beings in general, and ourselves in particular, may generate the awakening mind that they have not generated, and that it may abide and thrive in those who have. Here's another example of a sentence translated from Tibetan that, because the Tibetans don't have the same grammatical rules that we do, so their sentences go on and on. They don't have the idea specifically of a sentence. So all of that was a paragraph that was one sentence. Okay, I noticed this because my English teacher marked up so many of my papers. So let's go back through it. Okay. So we should make great prayers and aspirations. By the way, there's a difference between, actually the word prayer is difficult. You know, it's a very confusing word. Before I even get to what I was going to say, I have to say this, you know, because we in Christian and Jewish and Muslim cultures, we think of prayer as prayer to God, you know, requesting something. And here we're making aspirations, but the feeling is quite different around it. You know, we're not praying to ask for something, even though some of our request prayers may be, please grant me the inspiration to, you know, develop a kind heart. It might be something like that. But the real purpose is talking to ourselves, and that, you know, I want to develop a kind heart, and, you know, may I be able to do that. So the word prayer is not a particularly good translation of the Tibetan word mulam. Okay? And so mulam has been, you know, often it can be translated as aspiration, but then there's another word that is also translated as aspiration. Sometimes as determination. Yeah. When they talk about Amitabha's vows, actually the word vow is this word mulam, aspiration. It's not the word dompa, which is what we usually translate as vow. Yeah, it's interesting. So kind of like Amitabha's determinations, you know. So it's kind of like a cross between an aspiration and a determination. But what it is it's setting our mind to go in a certain direction. Yeah? And this is really important because it makes us think, what direction do I want my mind to go in? And then to form that aspiration, that determination to go in that direction. And we may request the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas for inspiration, but what opens us to receive their inspiration is the force of our aspiration and determination. Okay? So the word prayer is tricky. Okay? Okay, so to develop the aspirations, the determinations, by the force of mundane and transcendental merit. Mundane is the merit created within samsara. Transcendental is the merit created by Aryas. And especially our own merit created by our own body, speech, and mind. So all the merit in the world in general, and particularly our own, okay, throughout the three times, in the past, present, and future. Okay, so we're not just thinking about the present or the past, we're also thinking of the future merit that we and others are going to create. And then of all sentient beings in general, of ourselves in particular, and what we're setting the aspiration for, where we're directing the force of all of this merit, is so to be able to generate, sentient beings to be able to generate the bodhicitta that they haven't yet generated, and that what they have generated may be maintained, and may thrive and develop and be enhanced. Okay? So this is really seeing bodhicitta as kind of the cream of the teachings. Yeah? And why is it? Because, as you'll remember when we were studying the 108 verses of compassion, because you know, Buddhas are born from bodhisattvas, you know, who depend on bodhicitta, because the hearers and solitary realizers are born from Buddhas, you know. So everything in, whether you practice hearer, solitary realizer, or bodhisattva vehicle, all the good in one way or another that comes through the practice of those three vehicles comes back to bodhicitta, comes back to great compassion. Okay, so we set our aspiration that way. So this is an interesting thing, because during the day we should look at how many aspirations we make and what we aspire for. You know, because we get up in the morning and we all have our little list, don't we? Yeah, what we aspire to get done. and we make our strong morning aspirations. By the end of the day, may I cross this off, and may I cross this off, and may, you know. So we have some power of aspiration. But that aspiration, it changes from day to day, doesn't it, according to what's on our list. Yeah. But here we're developing the aspiration for bodhicitta, and that's not going to change day to day. We're going to keep building that aspiration again and again and again. Yeah. So it's an interesting thing to check in our lives, is what we aspire for. Yeah. And it's sometimes, I aspire to get such and such a job. Yeah. I aspire to eat chocolate chip cookies if they put them out. I aspire to get a good night's sleep. Yeah. I aspire to beat somebody at the golfing tournament. Yeah, I aspire to get a higher paid job. You know, we have aspirations all over the place. But, you know, what is the most meaningful aspiration that we can have in our life? Yeah? And so to make sure to keep on renewing this again and again and again. And so it's very important, you know, because we're really setting our energy in a certain direction when we're making an aspiration. And depending upon what aspirations we have, that influences our mood a lot, doesn't it? Yeah? Can you see in the morning that dependent upon what you're aspiring for in that day, that influences what kind of mood you're in? Yeah? Can you see that? Yeah? So, you know, I aspire to, you know, not let somebody take advantage of me at this meeting. Then what kind of mood are we in for the whole day? I don't know about you, but I'm not in a very good mood when I have that kind of aspiration. Okay? But if I aspire to develop bodhicitta, then, you know, I'm in a good mood for the day. And I'm not expecting to have bodhicitta by the evening, you know, but let's just go in that direction more and more and more. Okay? So really check it out and take care of your aspirations. You know how they say, be careful of what you pray to get, because you might get it? Yeah? So we all know that one, don't we? Yeah. May I have da-da-da-da-da, and then we get it and it's a mess. But, you know, when we aspire for bodhicitta, it's never going to turn out a mess. Okay, so that's the prayer of aspiration. So we dedicate the merit of this life, past lives, future lives, to remain inseparable from the practice of bodhicitta. Now, usually we make a prayer, may I never be separated from my lover, you know? Yeah, 25/8, I want to be with them. But try that, and you know, soon you want to break. But here it's, may I never be separated from bodhicitta. You know, in all of my lives, no matter where I'm born, no matter what I experience, no matter what social class, no matter what, whether I'm healthy or sick, may I never be separated from bodhicitta. Wouldn't that be beautiful? Yeah? So that's why it's important to really set that aspiration, because I think it's due to the force of having set that kind of aspiration in a previous life that we've been able to meet the Dharma in this life. You know, if we hadn't dedicated and set aspirations in a previous life, there wouldn't have been a cause for our merit to be steered to ripen in the way it has ripened in this life. And all of us listening have had, you know, the fortune to have some merit that ripened in terms of meeting the Dharma. And so what makes that happen is our prayers of dedication, prayers of aspiration. Okay, so in other words, wherever, and we also dedicate so that our practice of bodhicitta doesn't decrease but always increases. Our practice of the thought transformation teachings never decrease but always increase. We rejoice at the merit of ourselves and others, and we understand that due to our past virtue and our aspiration to accumulate those kind of virtuous causes back then for future happiness, that now we have the present opportunity that we have. And we understand that whatever present suffering we have comes because of negative karma, destructive karma that we created in a previous life. Yeah? So when we think like that, it really helps us understand our lives more. Then when our mind is unhappy, we know, okay, I need to do some purification practice to get rid of this destructive karma that I created in the past that is resulting in my mental unhappiness. Okay. Then the power of acquaintance, or the power of familiarity. This is the fifth one. We should familiarize ourselves at all times and in all circumstances solely with the actual meditations as they were explained above. In other words, we should really practice these meditations on equalizing and exchanging self and others that were explained. Really practice them at all times and in all circumstances. Okay? Now this is important, and this is something we have a hard time doing. Okay? All times and all circumstances. Well, there's some people that only have the energy to practice when they're suffering. Okay? So when they're really in a miserable condition, then they want to practice Dharma. But as soon as their condition kind of becomes okay, then they stop practicing. There's no more oomph, no more joyous effort, Okay. Then there's other people who practice when they're in good conditions and when they're happy, but then as soon as those conditions change, then they can't practice because they're unhappy. And so I notice this sometimes, especially, I remember joking about it when I was teaching in Seattle. It's like whenever people have some change in their life, then they stop practicing Dharma. You get married, so you stop. You get divorced, and you stop. Yeah? You get a job, so you stop practicing Dharma. You lose your job, then you stop practicing Dharma. It was just amazing to see what happened, And often these are people who I'm really strong in my practice, I'm really going, and then something would change, external situation in their life, and then Dharma practice went bye-bye. Yeah? Quite amazing to see. So this thing of practicing in all circumstances and at all times is very, very important. Okay? And so really learning to make it a pattern and a habit, and doing it whether we're healthy, whether we're sick, whether we want to, whether we don't want to, that it's just like brushing your teeth. You do it whether you're healthy, whether you're sick, whether you feel like brushing your teeth or you don't feel like brushing your teeth. You brush your teeth, don't you? So our Dharma practice should be kind of like that. We set up that kind of familiarity and automatic energy going in that direction. Yeah? So whether we're here at the Abbey, whether we're visiting friends and relatives, whether we're in retreat, whether we're out of retreat, to really, by familiarization, keep our practice steady, keep our mind steady. Yeah? And so this is, I see as the value of the practices that I've committed to my teacher to do on a daily basis. Yeah? Of course, there's days when I am so tired and I don't feel like doing them. I've let them go until the evening, but I do them anyway. Or I'm sick, Or I'm traveling and I have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to catch a flight, and then I'm sitting on an airplane for the next 24 hours. But you know, it's like I made a promise to my teacher, so I'm going to do that. That I may not always do it so well, but I'm doing it. And the force of doing it definitely has an impact on our mind. Okay? Really setting that familiarity. Okay? So that's how we should think of it. Okay? Where was I? Here. Power of Acquaintance. So the guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life says, the childish work only for their own benefit. The Buddhas work for the welfare of others. Just look at the difference between them. This verse cuts through it, doesn't it? You know? It's like, you can't get around that. Yeah? I mean, the childish, that means ordinary beings. Yeah? So we work for our own benefit, don't we? All the time. Yeah? Me, my, I, and mine. How can I be okay? I want to be comfortable. I have to have everything that makes me comfortable. I need to be liked. I need to do everything I can to make people like me. You know, I need to win the argument, so I'm not going to back down until I do. Yeah, I need to be right, and so I'm going to talk until I'm blue in the face and convert the other person so that they take my opinion and my idea as true. You know, so we have that kind of energy, and it's all self-serving, isn't it? Yeah, so we're working for our own benefit. Do we ever achieve lasting happiness through that? No. We've been doing this since beginningless time, and we haven't attained lasting happiness. The Buddhas, on the other hand, work for the welfare of others, and who's happier, us or the Buddhas? You know, it's like, boy, we really need to sit and think about this. Yeah? Because our self-centered thought is so deceptive. It's always, you know, follow me, I'll make you happy. And it doesn't. Yeah? So I find that this verse very good to really cut through a lot of stuff. Yeah? When I'm sitting there saying, oh, but I just want to be happy, I'm so tired of suffering, I'm so tired of being miserable. You know that mind? Then I sit and I say, okay, what's the cause of happiness? What's the cause of misery? And who's happier? Me or the Buddhas? Yeah? And then, okay, the Buddhas are happier. What did they do? Yeah? They trained their mind in cherishing others and in letting go of obsessive self-concern. Okay, so that's how I need to train my mind too. Yeah? Slowly, slowly, train my mind, day by day, little by little. Yeah? Okay? So this is the thing of acquainting the mind with the thought training practice. If we familiarize ourselves with this practice and maintain the conditions for doing so, we will gain perfection or enlightenment. As the saying goes, there is nothing that does not become easier with acquaintance. Now, when you're learning something that you don't like to do or that you're not particularly skilled at, you don't believe this is true. There is nothing that does not become easier with acquaintance. Yeah? And I remember being in Dharamsala struggling with Tibetan, and Geshe Nawandargi saying, if you have the Buddha nature and can become a Buddha, you can learn Tibetan. You know? In other words, don't discourage yourself and don't put limits on yourself before you even try. Yeah? So I still haven't learned Tibetan, but I did try, and I did get a little better. Yeah? But it really made an imprint on me, you know, that we shouldn't just say, oh, this is too hard, no matter how much I do it, I'm never going to improve. Yeah. or this affliction is just too strong. There's nothing else for me to do but to give in to it. Yeah. It may be strong now, but if we practice opposing it, and we practice applying the antidotes, and especially we familiarize ourselves with the antidotes when the affliction is not strong, then we're really getting the force of that familiarization and acquaintance, and that has a powerful reaction in our mind, a powerful effect in our mind. Yeah. Whereas if we just toss it up and say, well, forget it, then of course we won't get anywhere. Yeah. Okay. So I think you've probably all heard me talk about when I was teaching third grade, my student Tyrone. Yeah, I always wonder how Tyrone is, because he was in third grade. So what are you? You're like 9 years old in third grade? So somewhere in his previous 9 years, somebody had told him that he was stupid. Yeah? And so Tyrone thought he could not learn how to read. I was with Tyrone every day. He was not stupid. Yeah, this kid was not stupid. But because he thought he was, he couldn't learn to read. And so the big thing we had to work with was, you know, you're not stupid, Tyrone. You can do this. And so, you know, that's kind of an example we can all see with kids, things like that. But we do it ourselves. There's so many ways in which we limit ourselves by telling ourselves false stories about ourselves. Yeah? Like, I can't do it. You know, it's too hard. But, you know, if we tell ourselves that, then for sure we're not going to try, we're not going to get anywhere. Whereas if we say, I have the potential to do it, yes, it's difficult, but if I create the causes slowly, slowly, then because cause and effect works, eventually that I'll be able to do that. Okay? And the great Geshe Chekawa said, the mind that is full of faults has one great quality, that it does whatever it is taught. Okay? So our garbage mind has one great quality in that whatever we teach it and habituate it with, it goes in that direction. Yeah? And so that's why so much of Dharma practice is really rehabituating ourselves with more virtuous ways of thinking, ways of feeling, ways of speaking, ways of acting. Okay? The power of habituation and familiarization. Okay? So those 5, that's the way to really practice in the context of our life while we're still alive. Then there's the 5 practices, the 5 forces, 5 powers that you can practice at the time of death, which we'll do next. And I've heard the order of this teaching in 2 different ways. Okay, I've heard it first, the virtuous seed, then the aspiration, then destruction, then motivation, and then acquaintance. And then I've also heard it where number 2 and number 4 are reversed, so that at first it's virtuous seed, then it's motivation, then destruction, then aspiration, and then familiarity. I don't think that there has to be a big difference between these, because motivation and aspiration, you can see there's some similarity between the 2 of them. Okay? So, in Rays of the Sun, it talks about one way, but when Lama Yeshe taught it, he taught it the other way. So I'm going to go according to how Lama taught it, because I just remember when I first heard this teaching, it just blew my mind. It was like I was riveted. You know, here's what to do when you're dying. Okay, so our book says, applying the 5 powers at the time of death. In relating these instructions on the 5 powers to the advice concerning what to do at the time of death, the text says, and here are the lines from 7-Point Thought Transformation, the 5 powers themselves are the great vehicle's precept on the transference of consciousness. Cultivate these paths of practice. Okay, so the 5 powers, ones we just got done explaining, are the Mahayana precept, the Mahayana instruction on the transference of consciousness. Okay? The Tibetan word for transference of consciousness is Poa. Okay? Everybody's heard of Poa, because there's all these Poa retreats now where you can get an initiation, and then you do some practice, and then you get kind of a swelling on the crown of your head, and then they say it's guaranteed at the time of death that you can do this and project your mind into Pure Land. So that's how it's billed. It's not exactly like that, okay? It's, you receive an initiation, you do the practice of this visualization where you imagine sending your mind stream into the heart of Amitabha or some other deity who is seated on your head, and doing that. But it's incredibly important when you do the Poa practice that you also do a long life practice. And many people don't know this. It's also important, Pabonga Rinpoche explained, that even if you do this visualization, and there, you say the syllable hic, where you try and, eject the consciousness, that even if you do that and you get some swelling on the crown of your head, that is due to the winds in your body. It doesn't mean that you have some kind of realization. Mm-hmm. And then also, of course, if you don't practice regularly, you're going to forget it. And if you spend your life creating non-virtue, then it's going to be very difficult to send your mind to a Pure Land when you die. Okay, so it's not just, this isn't some fail-safe method. Yeah, you have to do a lot of other practices together with it and know how to do it properly. But it's said that, so I find it interesting, because that's called Poa, transference of consciousness. But then these 5 powers are also the transference of consciousness. And they have to deal with really how to steer your mind at the time of death. And if you steer your mind in a certain way, then you, by the power of your virtue, you transfer your mind into a good rebirth. Okay? So that's why it's called transference of consciousness. Okay. So the first one here is the power of the white seed, the power of the virtuous seed. So it says, we should purify the misdeeds which will cause our suffering in the future by application of the 4 powers. Okay, so this is the first thing to do, the power of the white seed. First, we have to do the 4 opponent powers. Okay, so generating regret, repairing the relationship, making a determination not to do it again, and doing some kind of remedial action. Yeah. So you don't necessarily wait until you die to do this, because hopefully you've been practicing the 5 powers while you've been alive, so you've been doing this on a daily practice. You don't want to wait until the time when you're going to die in the next 24 hours and think you're going to be able to do some fantastic purification and get rid of all the negative karma, because look what happens when we're sick for a day. Yeah? Can we practice very well when we're sick? No, we're just sleepy, we're tired, we're, no energy. So, we have to do this while we're alive, but then continue it as we're actively dying. Okay? So it's very important before we die to do purification practice. Okay? It's also very important to forgive the people we need to forgive, and to apologize to the people we need to apologize to. Now, the people we need to apologize to may not be alive still, or they may not want to see us. But the important thing is, in our mind, that we change our attitude towards them. And at least in our mind, we make an apology. Yeah? If they're still alive, we can go see them, we can write them a letter. Don't push it, and don't be attached to some kind of outcome, like, yes, they're going to accept my apology and apologize in return, you know. But the important thing here is that we clear our mind, yeah, and have a good attitude towards that person. Okay, so apologize to those people. And then to forgive the people we need to forgive. Because who wants to go to the grave with hatred in their heart? Not any fun. Not any fun. Yeah? So if we don't want to die with anger and hatred and grudges, why should we live with anger, hatred, and grudges? Yeah? If we don't want to die with those things, why do we hold a grudge now? Especially considering that we don't know when we're going to die and how fast our death is going to happen. I mean, you can get a brain aneurysm and then, or a heart attack, and bye-bye very quickly. Okay? So it's important to kind of clear up so much of this stuff now. And I think here's where doing retreat can be very helpful, as well as our daily practice. But really looking into these things and, you know, giving up the entrenched ego grasping at, you know, but I'm right, or but they hurt me and I hate them for it. You know, what use is that? Yeah? When you're dying, do you want to think about that? So it's best, give all of that up. Also, part of the white seed is making charity of our belongings. When I lived in Dharamsala, there was one woman who sometimes cooked lunch for a friend and I, a Tibetan woman. And I heard that when her father died, because he had escaped from Tibet in '59, when he had gotten into, I don't know where this was, whether it was still in Tibet or whether it was after he had gotten into India, but he had some gold and he had buried it somewhere. And on his deathbed, he was trying to tell his daughter where he had buried it. And that, when I heard that, I just thought, oh my goodness, you know, to die with that kind of thing on your mind, the attachment to something that you haven't, that you buried for safekeeping years ago, haven't used since, and now you're dying still with greed for it. You know, I just thought, wow, you know, I don't want to die that way. So it's important to give things away, you know, and when we give things away, then we're creating virtue, we're making charity, you know, practicing generosity. So again, we shouldn't wait until, you know, we're actively dying to give things away. Let's give things away now when we have a clear mind that can really generate a compassionate motivation for being generous. But also, as we're approaching death and there's fewer and fewer things we actually need and can use, then to really give stuff away. When I lived in Singapore, I was working with one young man who was dying. And he had just been accepted to go to graduate school in the States, which was like this, like pie in the sky opportunity for him. And then he had cancer and he was dying. He had an incredible heart though. And he sat us down one day, his sister and me and another Dharma friend, there, a few different people, and he outlined exactly how he wanted the memorial service to be and exactly what he wanted done with all of his stuff. And his books were his prized possession. Yeah. So even though when he was, dying, he started giving away his books and, kept giving them away. So by the time he died, I think he had actually given them all away. And the last thing he said when we were in the hospital, he told his sister to make sure to make offerings of any possessions or money that was left over to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha for him. That was the last thing he said. And that was so beautiful because he really just practiced generosity. Okay? So this thing too. So in a practical sense, it means having our will made. So we don't have to think about, where our bag of gold might be buried and who's going to get it. But also, even giving things away before we die so that there's not so much in the will for other people to, have to sort through and go through. But just practicing generosity as we go through our life. Okay. At the time of death, be fearless and free from sorrow, thinking it's all right for me to die. Yeah. So really thinking that, it's fine for me to die. Instead of the mind that says, no, I can't die, I don't want to die. It's like, hey, we're dying. So say, it's fine if I die. And if you think about it, we have died countless times in samsara. So it's not a new experience. We've died many times in samsara. We've given up many bodies in samsara. So I think it's helpful to train our mind while we're alive, and then especially at the time of death, of, I've died before, I don't need to be afraid of dying. And I'm giving up this body, and what is this body anyway? It's just material stuff. That goes to the bathroom and sweats and burps, and it's nothing gorgeous and beautiful, this body. So I don't need to cling to it. I don't need to cling to this body. And I don't need to be afraid of giving it up. Because anyway, it's not me. And it's really not mine either. Came from our parents, came from the food we ate. Body doesn't really belong to me. It's just our labeling mine and fixating on mine that then, we develop this obsessed relationship with this body. Okay? But, no, it's not even going to be a body. In a while, it'll just decompose, so let's not cling to it. Time to give it up. Bye. Thanks for being useful to help me work in the Dharma. Bye. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting to play with this in your meditation. If you look at somebody else's body, would you cling to their body at the time of death? Thinking, I want that body, I can't separate from that body. And would you look around at any of the bodies here you see in this room and think, oh, I want to stay with that body, I don't want to separate from it? Yuck! We wouldn't do that. Then why do we do it with this body? Yeah? There's no difference between their body and my body. It's all just organic matter. That's all. So if I'm not going to cling onto their body, why do I cling onto this body? Yeah? And think about it. You know, when you eat, when we're sitting at the lunch table and we're eating, well, the food we're eating is going to be transformed into this body. Okay? And the food the person next to you is going to eat is going to be transformed into their body. If you switch places, you switch plates. Yeah? Then the food that they were going to eat, now you eat, and it's transformed into your body and vice versa. So it's all just organic material, isn't it? And it could turn into either that person's body or my body equally, because just depending upon who happens to eat that piece of lettuce, it turns into one body or the other. And the piece of lettuce isn't either of us, is it? Yeah? So why are we so attached to the body that it gets transformed into? Yeah? When we think about it, we realize that this grasping that we have at the body, for the body, is really, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Yeah? I mean, I remember when my teacher first started to teach about this, in chapter 8 of Guide to a Bodhisattva's Way of Life. And it's like, I couldn't get it. It's like, but Lama, this is my body. Of course I cherish it more than somebody else's body. You know, when their body is hit, I don't say, ouch. So of course I need to cherish my body more. But then when you think about exactly what it is, the body, and it just being this vegetable stuff that depends upon who happens to eat which plate, then it's like, no need to hang on to it. When the time comes to die, goodbye. Yeah? So let's pray that we can have that attitude when we die. Yeah? Instead of kind of the knee-jerk reaction of, I've got to cling on to this thing. When it's a good vessel or vehicle for practicing the Dharma, so we keep it alive, we keep it healthy. But, and especially as it ages, the old broken down body, the aches and pains, and still when you're dying, you don't want to give it up. Okay. So at the time of death, be fearless and free from sorrow, thinking, it is all right for me to die. It is extremely important not to hold on to anything that would be a source of attachment, but to offer all your possessions to the higher and lower fields of merit. Okay, so to offer all of our possessions, the higher field of merit, our spiritual mentor and the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, the lower field of merit, sentient beings, especially those who are poor or sick or going through difficulties, okay, but to use our possessions while we're alive to create merit. Because at the time of death, we can't use them, and after we're gone, they just stay here. We can't use them to create merit after we're gone. Yeah, if we've clung on to them our whole life and have never wanted to separate from them. So at least, at the time when we're approaching death, to really give them away and not have anything around us and not that will incite attachment in us, and mentally not hold on to anything that will be a source of attachment. Because if you hold on to something, that causes so much difficulty in the death process. And then it makes you attracted to being born, in that, in the area with whatever it is that you were holding on to. Okay? So very, very important. There are many examples of incidences, such as that concerning the bhikshu, whose body burned thrice simultaneously due to his attachment to his alms bowl at the time of death. Okay, so this is a story that we have right here. The story is that there was a bhikshu who was very attached to his alms bowl, when he died. As a result, he was almost immediately reborn as a worm in the bowl because of his attachment to the bowl. And he was overwhelmed by the fire of anger. This worm that was born in his bowl, was overwhelmed by the fire of anger. And at the time that the bhikshu's body was cremated, the worm died, and was reborn in one of the hot hells because of his anger. So thus it was said that due to attachment, the bhikshu burned thrice simultaneously. So I guess the dying of the worm, his body burning, and then being born as a hell realm being, burning, and then burning with attachment. It must be, the worm dying. So the motto of the story is it's not worth being attached to anything. There's also the story of another monk who was very attached to Tibetan tea. I can't stand the stuff. I mean, if they said hot chocolate, it might be something else. It was Tibetan tea. And he was so attached to Tibetan tea that his friends were afraid that, they could see he was having difficulty dying because he was holding on to, I want Tibetan tea. So they said, there's better Tibetan tea in the Pure Land, go there. To help him release his attachment and aspire to be reborn in Amitabha's Pure Land. Okay? But the idea is, not to have anything around that invokes attachment in us. And I think about this because many people, their idea of the perfect death is to have all their friends and family all around them, saying, I love you, you mean so much, and da-da-da-da-da. And I think that would be very difficult and very confusing because you have to separate, and you have your attachment plus their attachment. I think it would be very, very difficult to have that kind of situation. So it's very important too, when we're with people who are dying, that we don't, in the name of our love for them, incite attachment, because it just makes their dying process more difficult. And I think that's why, many people on the hospital staff will tell you that more people die at night after their friends and relatives have gone home. Why? Because it's easier for them to go, because those people aren't all around pulling at them and making their own mind confused. Okay, I think we're going to have to stop here because it's nearly 7. We have 1 minute for question and answer. Anything?
Was all that still under the white seed?
Yeah, all this is still under the white seed. Yeah, the white seed's quite a long section in this book.
So at the time of death, you could possibly not get beyond the white seed. Circumstances a lot there.
Yeah, there's a lot there. So that's why, you said it's possible we may not get beyond it. So this is why it's important to be practicing all of this now. Do the purification now, give away things. If there's things we still need and we still use, we don't give them away, but we give them away mentally. That's why we're doing the mandala offering. So we should all be thinking when we do the mandala offering every day that we're giving away everything we own, including our body. And in that way, that really helps to prepare us for death, because every day, we're transforming our body into the mandala, offering it to the Buddha. We're thinking of, our body, possession, merit, everything. We're offering it again and again and again. Okay? So, these are all things we have to do while we're still alive. Mm-hmm.
I have a question. When Geshe Pauge taught, and I think he streamed this teaching, he said at the end, as I understood it, that it would help us at the time of death if we could practice, as we go to sleep, visualizing dissolving into Buddha.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like something like a little modified polar practice.
Mm-hmm.
So that thing that you said about you should be also doing long life practices,
Mm-hmm.
can you just clear that?
Okay. I think my guess, of what he was referring to, is in highest Yoga Tantra, they teach the death absorption and the visions that you have at the time of death, the experiences you have at the time of death. And they say that you have something similar to those same visions appearing to your mind as you're falling asleep. So if you could be mindful as you're falling asleep of those visions, then that can be very helpful at the time of death, because then you can get to a point of meditating in the clear light. Yeah. As far as what you heard him say, it's better that you ask him, because I don't know that.